Welcome to Coffee and Crypto. We're here just 1 minute late. I do apologize for that. Had a lot of things going on this morning. Wasn't able to be in office this morning, but I want to make it a priority to be on here at the right time. And today I'm gonna wait for everybody to kind of pile in a little bit, and we're gonna go for just a short period, and then we're gonna probably pick back up and do a little bit more of the stream later on. But like I said, I want to make sure that I was here on time and showing up for you guys. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the volatility in Bitcoin. You guys are going to see in some content that we're going to put out this week that Bitcoin is at some of the lowest volatility that it's seen in a very long time. Rock and Metal News is here. Crypto Mini Bike's here. Paul is here. Said, yo, what's up, guys? Right now, Bitcoin is seeing some of the lowest volatility that it's seen in a very, very, very long time. In fact, what I'm going to show you in tomorrow's stream and in some content coming up is that it's actually the lowest volatility on the weekly chart Bollinger Bands that we have seen ever. And what that implies is that Bitcoin is preparing for a bull market. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about that more throughout the rest of the week. That Bitcoin is preparing for a bull market. Now, there are plenty of different forces right now which are indicating that bull market is coming, many of them having to do with the macroeconomic environment. When you look at the macroeconomic environment, you realize that the Bitcoin market is one piece of a much larger puzzle. There is a story being told on the world stage of destabilization of the entire world. Not just the cryptocurrency market, not just the health of the world, not just through war and through all kinds of travesties that are going on there, not just in the manufacturing, the supply chain, not just through human rights, human trafficking, all these different areas that are changing in the world. One of the major areas that's changing in the world is finance and the currencies of the world. And what we're realizing as a society is what Safadine Amos has talked about in the Bitcoin Standard. We're realizing what many different people have realized throughout history when it happened to their currency, such as the Romans when they debased the denarii, the dinar, when the agri-beads were introduced into West Africa and it debased the currency there, when in Polynesia, the stones that they used to trade with were debased because Westerners brought in massive stones for the sake of trading. All these were currencies that were inflated. And so when you have a central currency and you have a problem, you have that kind of situation where you have a central currency and you have a problem, then it's the central government's job to try and fix that problem. The issue is when the central government, that's a nice Jeep Wrangler, when the central government tries to fix that problem using centralized methods, what they end up doing is they end up going directly against the flow of capitalism. The entire idea of capitalism is that you have the free hand of the market. The market is able to self-regulate itself. The market is able to determine what it's going to do. I look so weird without glasses on. This is strange. I'm gonna put these back on. You know, it's funny, whenever I was first, you got to find a way to hype yourself up. When I was 18, 19, what I would do is if I was trying to get excited about something, I would just play Bad to the Bone. I'd take these sunglasses, because I've had these for 6 years of prescription. I'd take them and I'd just go, boom, like that, and then put it on, play the music. I was so prideful. But, but it always got me hyped up. Yeah. When a central authority tries to solve a capitalistic problem in the markets, then they end up going against the entire idea of capitalism. The entire idea of capitalism is that the only way that the market works is that the market runs itself. And so the only way to actually fix some of the issues that we're running into with the currency is to take that power out of the central government's hands in the first place. And the way that you do that is through a decentralized currency such as Bitcoin. When you have a decentralized currency such as Bitcoin, you have the ability to turn what have been dials at the Federal Reserve, so the dial of quantitative easing and tightening, the dial of interest rates, and the different dials that they have access to, you have the ability to turn those not so much into dials that humans can manipulate anymore. You have the ability to turn them into what amounts to natural law. You have the ability to make the supply into more or less natural law. You have the ability to make the interest rate, which doesn't exist in crypto, but it basically eliminates it in the first place, which is a wonderful thing, but turns it into law that it doesn't apply, at least in the base currency. There is no base interest rate in the cryptocurrency market. It doesn't exist. And so when a currency goes from where we are now, where it's a fiat currency that's manipulated, and some of that you can argue needs to happen. You need to be able to expand the currency supply or have the currency supply be large enough in the first place to handle $100 trillion worth of global commerce. That has to happen, but the necessary evil of that is that you end up having a currency that's unstable. You end up having a currency that, when instability hits the market, then by very means of trying to use the currency to bring stability back to the market, you bring instability to the currency, which compounds the instability, and you have this compound interest domino effect where you end up, as you try to solve the instability, such as the instability that came during the pandemic, you end up causing instability. And so Bitcoin does away with that, and that's why Bitcoin does so well. And that's also why I think that right now we're at a very unique point in history. The pandemic shocked the system in a way that we had never before seen. The aftermath of that has been, how should you say, very ugly. And so Bitcoin now has a wonderful opportunity to capitalize on that. So overall, what I want to talk about today has to do with a few different news stories. There's a few things that have happened recently over the last 24 hours or so. First of all, there's the Jacobi spot Bitcoin ETF went live on the Amsterdam exchange in Holland yesterday. It's a big deal. That's been in development for the last several years. It was approved last year. It was supposed to launch in July. Finally launched August 15th. Today's August 16th. It finally launched August 15th. That is the first Bitcoin spot ETF in history. Now, if you don't know much about Bitcoin ETFs, you've probably heard a lot about them. By the way, shout out to everybody who's in chat. Jason Hahn, Crypto Mini Bike, Beer, Bourbon, Barbecue, and Nonsense is in chat. Jeb, I finally came to the realization listening to Anthony Oliver's Rich Man North of Richmond that I'm not buying Bitcoin for monetary gains. I'm buying Bitcoin for access to financial freedom. I've just come to that realization yesterday. I've been investing for a couple of years. That's right. That's why most people invest in Bitcoin. It's for exactly that reason. Now, that spot Bitcoin ETF is a big deal because it shows the adoption of Bitcoin going on. Drizzy Drake said, "What's up, Jeb? What is up, my friend?" Good deal. That spot Bitcoin ETF is one component of all of this because the spot Bitcoin ETF represents an unparalleled level of adoption on cryptocurrency. Now all of Europe is going to have access to a spot Bitcoin ETF, because before we've had Bitcoin ETFs. Like, we need to clarify the definitions here if you don't know the difference. That a Bitcoin ETF is any ETF that trades anything relating to Bitcoin. So if you have an ETF that trades the stocks of 15 different mining companies, that's a Bitcoin ETF because you're trading something in Bitcoin. It's an ETF, it's got Bitcoin companies inside of it. If you're trading an ETF that has Bitcoin companies, again, like Grayscale or ARK or MicroStrategy or other companies that are exposed to Bitcoin, then you end up having, you have that Bitcoin ETF. A Bitcoin spot ETF is a physically delivered Bitcoin ETF that trades the price of Bitcoin and actually has an impact on the supply and demand of the market. Very big difference, and that's never happened before. Yesterday was a first in the history of the cryptocurrency market that a Bitcoin spot ETF was approved, and that Bitcoin spot ETF being approved in Europe does help to pave the way for Bitcoin adoption through spot ETF means here in the United States, and it actually makes the case that the SEC is making quite a bit more difficult, so long as nothing hits the fan with this. So long as the Bitcoin spot ETF in Amsterdam doesn't absolutely just destroy the market, then the Securities and Exchange Commission is going to run into a lot of hot water. Now, let's talk a little bit about politics, because there's a political component to this. Securities and Exchange Commissioner Chairman, SEC Chairman Gary Gensler is a member of a 5-panel commission. There are 5 commissioners at the Securities and Exchange Commission, and normally one is elected by every president, and they rotate. And normally before Gary Gensler was Jay Clayton. He stepped down. He was very anti-crypto, probably even more anti-crypto than Gary Gensler. Typically, whenever a president is elected, the Securities and Exchange Commission chairman steps down, and the president, with Senate approval, will appoint the replacement. And then we'll also, so as far as they'll pull somebody off of the commission, or they'll put somebody on the commission, and then the commissioner will be chosen, and they'll be the leader of the Securities and Exchange Commission of the 5-panel board. Hester Pierce, many people call, crypto mom. Come 2024, because she's a Republican, if a Republican wins the presidency, and if a Republican wins the presidency, that's almost certainly going to be Donald Trump. Donald Trump is absolutely killing it in the polls right now. He's just, nobody's anywhere near him. Like him, hate him. Fact of the matter is, if a Republican wins, it's going to be Trump, almost certainly. Hester Pierce, being a Republican, would likely become the Securities Exchange Commission chairwoman. And if she does, I love that. I grew up around construction. I love sitting here and watching the development. I'm really interested in real estate. There's a commercial development going on right over here. I'm literally watching it there's 3 different pieces of heavy machinery moving around. Very interesting stuff to me. Anyway, if Donald Trump wins the presidency, then Hester Pierce will probably become the SEC chairman, and with the argument that, hey, there's been a spot Bitcoin ETF at that point, because this is 2 years from now. At that point, 2 years from now, Bitcoin's trading at all-time high, probably even more. And at that point, you also have a spot Bitcoin ETF succeeding in Europe, or at least not crashing and burning, and I don't think it will. I think it'll do well. Then Hester Pierce has a very easy green light for BlackRock's ETF, VanEck ETF, ARK's ETF, Grayscale's ETF, whoever's ETF. The deadline for BlackRock's ETF decision, the first deadline for the first decision as to whether to extend the deadline or to approve it, comes up here in the next month or so. The final decision is 240 days after they announced it. It was June 15th, the day that they actually filed it. So you're looking at roughly March of next year. We're going to know for sure whether BlackRock's ETF is going to be approved or not. Remember, BlackRock's ETF approval rating has been, I think it was 574 to 1. Might be a little bit off on that number, but it's 570 something to 1, as in 570 odd approvals to 1 disapproval. It's very, 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 very likely that they would not have put forward this ETF unless they thought it was going to get approved. And so there is a strong likelihood that it will get approved. If it doesn't get approved, BlackRock very clearly is showing that even the boomers have an interest in cryptocurrency, because BlackRock is managing very almost $10 trillion worth of funds. BlackRock knows that this is a place that they can make money. And so the way the stars are aligning here, and the way this ties into Bitcoin's low volatility right now, is that I believe we're going to see a very serious development going on in Europe over the next 3 to 4 months, where people are going to realize, wait a minute, spot Bitcoin ETF, hugely, wildly successful or not, didn't crash and burn, didn't screw anybody over. So why don't we have that in the United States? And I think you're going to see increased pressure for that. Donald Trump might not be a fan of cryptocurrency himself, but he's not the guy that would be sitting on the Securities Exchange Commission. That would more than likely be Hester Pierce, or somebody at least who's not as hardline as Gary Gensler. And so by my best estimation, even if BlackRock doesn't get approved on this round, a Ram Grand Caravan, I think it is, with no cat. That's interesting. That's new. No catalytic converter. Oh, I can smell it too. I love this. This is cool. This is cool. It's so interesting. I don't know if you guys ever do this. It's so interesting to just kind of sit and people watch sometimes. People are so interesting. I love people. Anyway, with this changing environment, it's very likely that a spot Bitcoin ETF will be approved in the next 2 to 3 years. And when that occurs, that's going to be one of the biggest catalysts that Bitcoin's ever witnessed. Now, as far as low volatility, Bitcoin is very close to the halving. Typically speaking, Bitcoin will hit all-time high about 220 to 240 days after the halving. In the last cycle, it happened, I want to say, 240 days later. It was May 11th, and then we hit all-time high April 15th, I think it was. I think it was actually tax day. So you do the math on that, it's around 220, 240, somewhere in there days. 200 and a quarter days. Same thing happened post-2016 halving. About 200 and some odd days later, we hit all-time high. We breached the previous all-time high. I'm not saying that that's when we hit the permanent all-time high. That's when we breached the previous all-time high. So for us, that'd be us breaching $69,000 about 9 months after we hit halving. Halving is in about 6 months, so we're looking at hitting all-time high based on that historical trend, which I honestly think will probably hold sometime in late 2024. Hitting rallying into new all-time highs, really kicking up well into 2025. So let's pause for a second, read chat. Really appreciate all of you guys tuning in. That low volatility, like I said, is a very big story in Bitcoin right now. You know, sometimes it's easy to look at the market and say there's no story, but oftentimes if there's no story, that actually is a very important story. So it's not that there's never something interesting going on in crypto. It's that even when there's nothing interesting going on in crypto, and there are, obviously, we just had a Bitcoin spot ETF approved yesterday. That's huge news. Even when that's occurring, it's very important to know that that in and of itself is something that's very important. Rave Song Records said, nice video set, thank you. MS said, love from Germany. Thank you so much, love from America. When will a spot ETF be approved in the US? My prediction is March 2024. If BlackRock gets approved, that's my prediction too. At this point, I wouldn't put it past the SEC, again, to need a change in leadership, because Gary Gensler is just, golly, the guy is just he's like the Wicked Witch of the West for crypto. It's awful. I mean, I can see him now just riding in on his broomstick to just destroy all of our hopes and dreams. No, for real, I don't want to condemn anybody, even Gary Gensler, but I definitely think he's got a political bias. But yeah, I think if BlackRock's ETF doesn't get approved, I think our next hope is waiting for one to be proposed after a change in leadership at the SEC, and that's likely going to take place in 2024, so it might be even 2025 before we see one. But that just gives us more time to get ready. The background noise of crows is neat. Yeah, it's so interesting. There goes the decatted Dodge Ram. Dodge Ram. Car commercials are getting in my head. Dodge Ram, Jeep, Chrysler, Dodge, whatever it is. Ram, whatever. I don't know my cars that well. It's a minivan. Trump wife and kids are into crypto. Yeah, I have. I know a guy who was at a meeting with DTJ, you know, Donald Trump Jr., and he was saying that he's a pretty big proponent of it. Obviously, Donald Trump Jr. is very far from the White House, just because he's, you know, his dad's got the limelight. But it's very possible that one day he could be in some kind of position of leadership. Not just obviously he's influential right now, but one day he could be in some kind of position of leadership and act on that. But as far as I know, he is a pretty big proponent of cryptocurrency. Trump and all good presidents are going to protect the petrodollar first. That's a very good point. Yeah. That being said, I don't think Trump really cares. If Trump wins, I don't think he really cares. I don't think Joe Biden really cares. I don't think either one of them really care very much about Bitcoin. Bitcoin's a $500 billion industry, and that sounds like a lot to us because it is. I mean, that's a big industry. If you're the president of the United States, you're the most powerful person on planet Earth. You should be more worried about China. You should be more concerned about what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. You should be more concerned about inflation. You should be more concerned about jobs. You should be more concerned about underemployment statistics, which are not great right now. Underemployment is just the number of people that are working at a job that pays significantly less than what they should be making based on their experience and based on their college degree and their resume and all that. You should be caring about those numbers. So, Bitcoin Trini said, what's going on? I was not able to be in office today, so I literally stopped as quick as I could, and I went live, because I'm going to be here for you guys. I'm going to show up, and I love you guys. I really appreciate you being here. So we've got about 200 people watching, about 70 likes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back in stream tomorrow. We're holding 29K is huge. Yes, it is. That's a very big deal. And so, like I said, kind of the whole overarching theme of what we're talking about today is the fact that Bitcoin's low volatility is very significant for Bitcoin. And it's actually very bullish. You know, when Bitcoin's trading sideways like this, it's been trading sideways for 3 weeks. When Bitcoin's trading sideways like this, it does indicate that a breakout is coming. I have a chart, and obviously I don't have it in front of me because I'm sitting here with my phone. But I do have a chart to show you guys of all of the times that Bitcoin has seen volatility even as close to as low as it is right now. This is, as far as I can tell, the lowest volatility that Bitcoin has witnessed on the weekly chart Bollinger Bands. You can go look at it yourself on TradingView. This is the lowest weekly chart volatility that Bitcoin has seen ever on the Bollinger Bands. Every time that's happened has been a continuation of a trend. It's been a continuation of a downtrend in a bear market. It's been a continuation of an uptrend in a bull market. We're in an uptrend right now. You know, when people say, oh, crypto winter, we're in an uptrend. We're in the pre-halving phase of the bull market. At least I think we are right now. And so that leads us to the understanding that this low volatility is actually a setup. Not a bad setup. It's a good setup. It's a very bullish setup. Happy early birthday. Thank you so much. Jason Hahn said, I think it also gets approved because BlackRock is literally the fourth branch of the government and has a lot of sway. BlackRock is a very powerful organization. If you guys don't know much about BlackRock, BlackRock was basically the entity that popularized ETF investing, and ETF is basically just a type. I mean, there's a bunch of them. You got all kinds of different baskets. You know, mutual funds are closely related. An ETF is basically just a basket of a bunch of different stuff. You know, if you're doing a spot Bitcoin ETF, then it's one thing. It's a basket of Bitcoin, physically settled Bitcoin. But an ETF is basically a basket of saying, hey, I've got 300 companies here, and it's actively managed by this team, and it's got these companies in it. So I'm going to buy this ETF, and it's a way of investing in the market through a diversified means. BlackRock's got $9.5 trillion under management. Larry Fink and 6 other guys co-founded it in 1988. They took it from $5 million to $8 billion in assets under management in 5 years. And in 1998, they came out with a software called Aladdin, and Aladdin helped them to predict what companies were going to succeed and fail, and why and when and how. And it was basically a very, 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 very early form of a fancy spreadsheet combined with a little bit of early artificial intelligence and technical analysis to predict what the company was going to do and whether it was going to succeed or not. And so that kind of made them very rich because it gave them a competitive advantage. Then they launched iShares, which is their own brand of ETFs. Now they've got hundreds of ETFs that they personally, as far as not personally because they're a company, but they themselves manage. And they've got $9.5 trillion in assets under management. They're the largest shareholder of, I believe they're the largest shareholder of Fox and Comcast. Don't quote me on that. They're in the top 3. They are the largest shareholder of Disney. They own 4.13% of Disney, at least the people that invest with BlackRock. But of course, if you put money into BlackRock, then BlackRock is the asset manager of Disney. So, you know, if Disney or Fox or Comcast and several other companies want to change their executive leadership, then they've got to go talk to BlackRock. They've got to go get approval from BlackRock because BlackRock holds so much of their market capitalization in voting shares that they have a right to that. And that's the tricky thing about when you get a company that big. It, by just the way that the system works, ends up having a lot of power. And it's, if you want to call it fair, it's fair because it's the way the law works. Now, I think the law should probably be changed that no one individual company can have that much sway over the entire economy, but it is legal. It's the law that's wrong. They also came out with ESG. If you guys remember back to 2020, they'd been kind of doing something similar to that since, you know, 02. ESG was the way of giving each company a score based on their human rights, their climate, their social good, and all of that. And then BlackRock turns around and invests in a bunch of companies that have terrible ESG scores. So people call them hypocrites for that. The fact of the matter, BlackRock is one of the most powerful companies on planet Earth. And as is being said in chat, they have a lot of sway. They've got a lot of sway. And so it is very likely that BlackRock's ETF will be approved. All right. What happens when the BlackRock ETF is not approved? I think that honestly, I hate to say this, but I would kind of be surprised if it was approved under Gary Gensler. It's possible. I would be a little bit surprised if it actually got approved under Gary Gensler. If it's not approved, then, you know, it's the same thing that's happened every time that a Bitcoin ETF has not been approved. It's a nothing burger. It might drop the market a little bit for a few days. It'll be relevant, but it won't change the fact that we can now read in the history books, hey, the most powerful company on the planet tried to get a Bitcoin ETF. That's a big deal. That's a little bit like, you know, many people run for president knowing full well that they probably won't get the presidency, but they run for president so they can have it on their resume. Yeah, I was a serious contender for president of the United States. That alone carries clout. And with Bitcoin, we can look back and say, Bitcoin may not have a Bitcoin ETF, but BlackRock tried to get one. Now we know that it's not that BlackRock, that Bitcoin doesn't deserve an ETF because the market agrees that they do. The regulator doesn't. So now, even if they don't get approved, we know, all right, it's not that Bitcoin's not ready. BlackRock, in my opinion, is probably more of an authority about what should have an ETF and what shouldn't than the SEC. Now, that's not to say that they're a very good authority. But I am going to say that if BlackRock believes that they can make money with Bitcoin by selling ETFs of Bitcoin, spot Bitcoin ETFs, physically settled spot Bitcoin ETFs, to their customer base, then that is one of the biggest green flags that we could possibly get for Bitcoin. So even if it doesn't get approved, oh, that one doesn't have a cap because it's a purple Corvette C7 with a Z51 performance package on it. Nice car. But yes, so if it doesn't get approved, I don't think that's the end of the world because it's going to happen eventually. I mean, there's only so much pressure that the SEC can hold back. It's my understanding that a wave of ETFs are lined up for March. There's so much mixed info out there, I don't know what's what anymore. So 2E Enterprises, very simply, when BlackRock filed for their Bitcoin ETF with the SEC. I believe, again, don't quote me on this. I'll check into this. I believe it was June 15th. It's mid-June. Might have been a couple days off, but it's somewhere around June 15th. They filed for their Bitcoin ETF. Everybody else under the sun that had their Bitcoin ETF denied got a fire lit under their butt and said, whoa, wait a minute. BlackRock's going to get a Bitcoin ETF. I went in on that game. So Grayscale, VanEck, and ARK all pretty much went right back into the Bitcoin ETF game. And there's active lawsuits right now against the SEC for not approving Bitcoin ETFs when they probably should have. So when we see a Bitcoin ETF get approved, and it will happen, it will be very bullish for the Bitcoin market. Now, a couple of other news stories that I think are interesting. We've seen part of Binance, Binance Connect. It was a service that allowed for institutions to easily and seamlessly transact between Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, between cryptocurrencies and other payments. Basically, accept payments in crypto has been shut down. Binance has decided, hey, look, every couple of years we look at our business models and we decide we need to figure out what we're going to invest in and what we're not going to invest in. They went ahead and nixed that. There's also been some regulatory pressure there. So that's a bit of a step in the wrong direction for Bitcoin adoption. Not a great story, but ultimately I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on the market. It's important, yes, but there are other ways that companies can deal with that. If you've been seeing that in the headlines, it's not exactly a good thing, but I wouldn't say it's the end of the world either. A couple of other stories that I think are very, very, very significant. These are very bullish. PayPal launched on August 7th. There was a story that came out about PYUSD. They are launching their own stablecoin. PayPal has been trying to get into the cryptocurrency game ever since becoming a more cryptocurrency inclusive company, starting that initiative in right around 2020 when Bitcoin started exploding. And so they've soft launched their own stablecoin, PYUSD. Hasn't actually launched yet. You can't see the price of it. Obviously it should be pegged to $1. They're going to back it with different assets. Every stablecoin says, hey, we've got these assets to back it, and they're going to back it and all of that. But they've also launched something called a cryptocurrency hub on PayPal for limited availability. It's actually pretty interesting. It's where you're going to be able to use PYUSD. It's where you're going to be able to transact with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and be able to exchange in and out of it, where your wallet's going to be. It's called the cryptocurrency hub because it's essentially where you're going to go in PayPal when you want to do anything cryptocurrency. So that's a pretty big deal. Cryptocurrency has not cryptocurrency. I want to say PayPal has like 300 million users. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency's got about 300 million users. So that's a match made in heaven right there. Everybody who's using PayPal is already obviously, and Venmo because PayPal owns Venmo, is obviously very used to digital assets. That you're also probably talking about somewhat of the younger generation. You've got some of the older generations using PayPal and Venmo, but you're probably not having the much older generations using a lot of PayPal and Venmo. You're usually looking at a demographic that's slightly younger, pushing up into the 40s as well, but mostly the younger generation is using PayPal, especially Venmo. Venmo came out more recently. It's mobile, so it's more even Zoomer and millennial friendly. Even than PayPal, and this is going to be available to certain select users that are in good standing on PayPal. This is a huge adoption story. This is the kind of thing that is very significant for Bitcoin, and it's also one of those things that ties back into that low volatility. When we look at the low volatility on Bitcoin, it reads a story that the bullish news and the bearish news is not affecting it. The reason that's so exciting, because that might seem like it's just the market's decoupled from the news. It's not. The reason that's so exciting is because when you have bullish and bearish news and the market does nothing, it shows that the market has very strong support. And since we're in an uptrend, it shows us that trend is strong. If we were in a downtrend and we moved and we did nothing, then that might not be the best news, because it would mean that the bullish news isn't doing anything. But for us, because we're in a prolonged uptrend, we're following an uptrend over the course of the year, it tells us that when we have that low volatility and there's bearish news that comes out, like, Binance Connect getting shut down or something like that. Again, small stories, nothing huge. We're not talking about, the SEC's attack on cryptocurrency or anything, although that's still ongoing. The bearish news is not having a huge impact on crypto. What is having a big impact on crypto is the bullish news, because it's holding it up. We're in a longer term uptrend, but we're in a shorter term downtrend. That bullish news is still going to have an impact on crypto, and it's still there and it's still relevant. The headlines right now, for the most part, are neutral, although there are some very bullish things happening. Like I said, spot Bitcoin ETF went live yesterday. People are not talking about that. That's one of the biggest news stories in the history of crypto. I don't want to exaggerate, but truly, that is one of the most significant things that's happened to Bitcoin in a very long time. It paves the way for a Bitcoin spot ETF in the United States. It's a shame it didn't happen here first, but it probably will happen within the next 3 years. We've also seen the cryptocurrency hub over on PayPal continuing to grow. These are all stories that are bullish. And so while they're not impacting the market right now in a bullish way, that's okay. Bitcoin's been in a long uptrend this year. And at the same time, the stock market is going through a correction. The stocks have rallied aggressively, and the SPY is moving to the downside. We're also seeing people are worried about more interest rate hikes. The fact of the matter is, we are seeing a change right now where the world is starting to accept Bitcoin as part of the way that it operates. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency are not going anywhere, because if they were, the last 8 months would have been the time. And Bitcoin has only grown. The altcoins are struggling. There's a huge attack going on against them. But just so you know, that's never going to have the same bite that it does right now. Like, we got that out of the way. It's a little bit like saying, man, I'm gonna have to learn how to do speech and debate. The background sound is so America. I know. Yeah, you got all the fast cars and the cats over there building and all the cinder blocks, and here I can just kind of show you over there. They're building something over there. It's a little bit like if you're trying to learn to speak. You're only ever going to have to get up in front of an audience for the first time once, and then you're done. You've done it before. Like with this channel, when I made the first video, it was daunting. I was like, man, is it gonna get received? No, had 3 views. You know, now it's got a few thousand because people go back and they're like, oh, I want to see the first video on the channel. But at the time, it had like 5 views, 3, 4, 5 views, whatever. That was intimidating. I'm like, man, I'm gonna make this video and put this work into it. It's gonna do nothing. Nobody's gonna care. Did it anyway. Kind of the same thing with crypto. You go through this, man, we're getting an onslaught from the SEC. This is the largest attack from the government that we've ever seen. Howdy, brother. And it's done. As far as it's happened now. We're in this. We've survived the initial phase. There's not much more smoke and mirrors that the regulators can push at us. The fact is, we're here. We're here. Bitcoin's still here. So the volatility is low despite a lot of bullish news. That, in my mind, is a good sign. In my mind, that is a sign that Bitcoin is going to do very well. All right, let's read some chat. Why is William O'Leary? I think I met your brother, Kevin. Why is everybody in such a hurry for a bull run? Everybody on YouTube is just trying to kickstart a bull run, not until 2025. Yeah, I think you're gonna see more bullishness in 2024, but yeah, 2025 is gonna be the year. 2021 was the year, 2017 was the year. It's the odd number year after the halving that the bull run takes place. We saw the last halving, May 11th, 2020. The bull run took place throughout the course of that year and on into the next year. 2024, 2025 are gonna be the golden years. This is kind of the preparation years. Two Enterprises said, are you near the beach? No, I'm about as far from the beach. This is a fun fact. I am literally right now, I'm on location. I'm about as far away from a beach as you can possibly be in Florida. That's where I am. I'm about as far away from a beach as you possibly can be in Florida. Hope to see more videos again, Jeb. Deep Diver said, coming soon. Coming soon, my friend. We were just talking a lot yesterday about what we want those to look like, because I really want to put out quality videos. I want to just absolutely nail it and just put videos out that are the best videos in the entire industry. Just want to absolutely nail it. By the way, Deep Diver, thank you for becoming a Jedi Youngling and supporting the channel. Really appreciate that, my friend. Thank you for your commitment to supporting us. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. BlackRock knows where they're buried. It will get approved. Yeah, I mean, you never know. I don't know. You never do know, do you? Let's see. Let's see, just gonna read a little bit of chat. Holding 29K is huge, absolutely. That's 330 days. Yeah, about 330 days from now is when you would hit all-time high. It's about a year from now, based on that model. People are saying 100K by year's end. Even Robert Kiyosaki. Got a lot of respect for Robert Kiyosaki. Could not disagree more. We're not going to 100K this year. You know, it's funny, the The most viewed video on the channel is me saying we're not going to 100K. And for some reason, me saying that got 130,000 views. Yeah, we're not going to 100K this year. Maybe 2025. You know, I like to, you know, sometimes it means we get less views, it means we're not as clickbaity, but I get to be integral. That's worth it. You know, if I get to come on here and I get to say, yeah, I don't think we're going to 100K this year, but I tell you what I actually think, and I get less views for it, that's fine. I'm not here to give you a hype. I'm here to give you the truth. And the truth is, I think it's probably 2025, maybe even 2026, probably 2025 that we're hitting that we're hitting 100K. I'm driving on the interstate right now in Florida and thought the car passed by Jed was passing by me. Oh man, I'm sorry. Be careful. Yeah, no, the dually you just heard was not next to you as far as it could be. How many BTC are available on the market at, Jed? Right now, according to CoinMarketCap, there's been about 19.6 million, 19.7 million mined total. We don't actually know the circulating supply because we don't know how much has been destroyed. Fact of the matter is, Bitcoin gets lost all the time and it can't be recovered. That's one of my biggest arguments against Bitcoin replacing the dollar. It doesn't have enough divisibility to liquidate a $100 trillion market. I don't think fiat currencies are going to disappear. In the same way gold has not replaced the dollar. In the same way that there's always been something that was more, it was an easier medium of exchange. It's easier to work with dollars in some ways than Bitcoin because it's more stable. At least the volatility is lower, you might say. Of course, there's, you know, inflation, but it's not changing 10% a day. It might change 10% a year. People appreciate that. Even if the volatility is in the long term to the upside on Bitcoin, people appreciate short-term medium of exchange currencies to be very, very stable, even if there is a long-term general trend down. It's a price they're willing to pay for the stability. So I don't think Bitcoin is going, and for that reason and the fact that Bitcoin just simply does not have the ability to lubricate every single facet of the global market, I don't think Bitcoin is going to replace sovereign currencies. I do think that Bitcoin will become a very important tool for people to shore up the downsides of sovereign currencies. Sovereign currencies, obviously, you pay for that stability by holding your money in an appreciating asset. People can do a couple of things with that. Either one, they can invest in the stock market, they can beat inflation, or two, they can invest in Bitcoin and beat inflation. There's two ways you can beat inflation. Number one, you can beat inflation by investing in something that doesn't do the whole inflation nonsense. As far as Bitcoin does have new circulating supply added, but it's a disinflationary. It's not de-inflationary. It's a disinflationary currency by programming. It's a de-inflationary currency in reality because cryptocurrency is lost. So just make sure we get that. It's a disinflationary currency, as in the inflation rate goes down over time because of the way it was programmed. And it's a de-inflationary currency because of the fact that currency is lost over time. The Bitcoin market is a perfect place to store value if you're trying to get out of a deflationary currency, such as the United States dollar. The difference between Bitcoin and the US dollar is that by its very nature, the Bitcoin market is disinflationary, as in its inflation mechanic loses inflationary properties over time through the halving. And at the same time, Bitcoin does not operate that way. The United States dollar does not operate that way. By its very design, it is inflationary. Bitcoin's disinflationary, the United States dollar is inflationary. And so when people are using money in the dollar, what they're gonna do is they're gonna keep, 3 to 6 months of expenses probably in dollars because it's the most liquid. It's the most quote unquote stable. At least it's the lowest volatility. Bitcoin's very low volatility right now, but it's normally much higher volatility. That's the trend. So when you have a lower volatility currency, typically you're going to do short-term exchange on that. So you're going to go buy your groceries in something like the dollar. But if you've got more wealth than what it takes to have a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, which I recommend everybody have, if you have more wealth than that, then you're going to invest it. And where are you going to invest it? You're going to invest it in something that can beat and outpace the market aggressively. There's two ways you can do that. You can either do that through investing in, well, there's more ways you can do that, but there's two primary ways that individuals of, sub $1 million net worth do that. They either invest in the stock market or they invest in cryptocurrency, and they do that for two different reasons. Both of them have the same core reason. The core reason is they're trying to beat inflation. They're trying to not let their $100 turn into 2 pennies over the course of the next 70 years. So they invest in the stock market and they bet on the United States economy, or whatever economy they're investing in. You know, it could be international markets, but they're betting on a market to grow faster than inflation causes them to lose value. And the other thing they can do is they can invest in a market that doesn't have inflationary mechanics in the first place. That's why people invest in gold. And that's why people will invest in Bitcoin. Bitcoin fills that niche very well that gold fills, except it's better. Because it's actually a funny story. Gold oftentimes is just as inflationary as the US dollar. There are plenty of times throughout history that gold has seen 2 to 3% inflation every single year, just like the target for the dollar. So people want to criticize the dollar for being inflationary. If we were on a gold standard, we'd still be having 2 to 3% inflation. Still a problem. There is literally hundreds or thousands of metric tons more gold in human hands today than there was 100 years ago. Vastly more gold. And now a lot of it's used in technology, like in this smartphone I'm shooting on. There's certain semiconductors in here that need gold, but there's vastly more of it in human possession than ever before. So there's inflation in the gold market too. People forget that. It is an inflationary market also because you can mine more of it, especially when space mining comes online. You know, we're talking 50 years from now, but that's still something to consider. That's not true for Bitcoin. So the value proposition for gold and why people have $10 trillion of value in it is because of its industrial use case, but the part of that market capitalization coming from actually investing in it for inflation hedging is probably $1 to $3 trillion. Bitcoin's probably going to pass that in the next 3 to 5 years because Bitcoin does a better job at being gold than gold does. So when Bitcoin has very low volatility now, just remember that Bitcoin's huge volatility of jumping around 10% every single day is actually one of the only real reasons why people don't even use it as their daily driving currency. Of course, there's the subdivisibility component. I know it can be divided down to 100 million units, but even still, there's not enough Satoshis in the world to lubricate the entire global market. But there is enough to make Bitcoin worth north of $10 trillion. Easy. That's a 20x from where we are right now. And that is an investment that has a very low risk, in my opinion. I think Bitcoin is in a very wonderful position to lead the world in this new era in the 2020s of instability. Let me just kind of wrap this out in a nutshell. Make this simple. Bitcoin has very low volatility right now, and people sometimes see that as a bad thing. Oh, because it's boring. Oh no, it's boring. Bitcoin's not doing anything. I'm bored. Sorry. Sometimes things are boring. Sometimes if you're trying to do anything right, you're going to have periods where you're bored of what you're doing, but you know that you do it anyway because the principles tell you that it works, so you do it. Sometimes Bitcoin's going to be boring. So is anything worth doing. There is a huge amount of instability coming this decade, and Bitcoin's primary use case and value proposition is that it counters that volatility, and it's a safe haven for people to go to because it acts more like a force of nature than a currency that can be manipulated by man. It's a little bit like investing in gravity. It's not going to change, and that's a beautiful thing. It's a little bit like investing in electromagnetism. It's not going to change. A little bit like investing in strong or weak nuclear forces. It's not going to change. They're the 4 fundamental forces of the universe. It's a little bit like investing in timeless principles, like, you know, taking care of your family, being unified, sustainability, commitment. It's a little bit like that. It's a little bit like investing in things that don't change. It's a little bit like investing in yourself, because you're going to change. Well, the fact of the matter is you can't change the fact that the only person that can make a difference in your life, truly, that you can count on, is you, and trusting in God. It's a little bit like investing in your relationship with an unchanging God. It's a little bit like investing in the fact that it will never change, that you are the only person that you can count on to change your life. You've got to take responsibility for your own actions. Invest in things that are unchanging. Bitcoin is the first, and it's one of the only ways that you can actually make that investment with dollars. And that, my friends, is what we call a blockchain revolution. Really appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Really appreciate you guys for tuning in. We are going to wrap it out. thank you guys for tuning into the little bit of a different set here. Hopefully it was fun. Want to make sure I'm here for you guys and bringing you daily content. Should be back in studio tomorrow. I'm looking forward to bringing you guys some great videos. Like I said, that's going to do it for today. Before I go, hopefully I don't get copyright strike. Ah! Before I go, I guess that's our outro music. Before I go, I just first want to thank each and every single last one of you for watching, as always. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.